Welcome all. We will call to order our emergency meeting of the Clinton City Council. We need to call roll. No? Okay. The purpose of this meeting is to examine Clinton's COVID-19 virus policy. And I have a pack of information in front of each one of you, and I hope that everything is in there, and if you tell me if it's not. I want to start with, well, I'm going to tell you. You're going to say, I don't have this. We're going to start with the law, which has paved the way for these emergency declarations and proclamations to make their way into public life. And we will refer to the statute 63, Oklahoma statutes 683.2 and 683.3. We should have a copy of that. And without reading the entire statute, this is an action which enables our council to meet and visit about this issue. Has to do with emergencies, and because of the existing and increasing possibility of occurrence of disasters of unprecedented size and destructiveness resulting from natural and man-made causes, in order to ensure that preparations of this state will adequately deal with such disasters and emergencies, to generally provide for the common defense and to protect the public peace, health, and safety, to preserve the lives and property of the people of this state, and to carry out the objectives of the state and national survival and recovery in the event of a disaster or emergency, it is hereby found and declared to be necessary to create the Oklahoma Department of Emergency Management, OEM. Authorize the creation of local organizations for emergency management in the counties and incorporated municipalities of this state. And number 3, provide for the formulation and execution of an emergency operations plan for the state. And then this is where we are pooling our resources today. Confer upon the governor and upon the executive heads or governing bodies, we being one, of the political subdivisions of Clinton, Oklahoma, municipality of the state, the emergency powers provided in the Oklahoma Emergency Management Act of 2003. So the legal authority for us to set here is based upon in what has been declared an emergency, and in our nation, in our state, for us to meet and visit about this. Now, we're a council-driven, chartered municipality, and a lot of cities, and I think I was impressed with knowing that this type of thing has been going on over the last few days or weeks in communities that are not as visible and highlighted as Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Stillwater. And most of these are driven by mayors only. And in this particular situation, while I as mayor am be a part of this deliberative body, the council, according to our charter, in issues of emergencies, and of course we're talking about ordinances, but we're just going to take this as a council-driven. And Ryan's not here today, but I've discussed these things in general with him. Anything that we decide to do today will be reviewed by him prior to actual inaction, if we do anything today, as far as an inaction day. But so we are looking at this as a governing body, an entire council. I want, if anything, to do. The city of Bartlesville, Blanchard, the town of Carlton, Landy, Chickasha, Choctaw, Claremore, Collinsville, Cushing, Edmond, Eufaula, Fairview, Heavener, Jenks, Kingfisher, Lawton, Manford, McAllister, Midwest City, Owasso, Oklahoma City, Salisaw, Sand Springs, Sperry, Stillwater, Weatherford, the Village in Oklahoma City, Yukon, and I think it's not on here, but late-breaking things like Cordell, I think they met last night. I'm not sure about that, but this is just an ongoing thing. So, yeah, we talked at council meeting on Tuesday that, as a body, we have a responsibility to to make sure that we're doing everything prudent and rational and not outside the loop of what's reasonable and rational to protect the public safety. So with that, you should have also in your packet. And what I've noticed about all of these, and we have 4 examples of things that have happened, and our discussion can begin there. But each proclamation or declaration from each community, the whereases, and those seem to be driven by a model that has been sent down by the emergency management group and from state officials. And that model, and I'd like to read it, you guys have it there, and you will see that it is the prelude, or it is the whereas portion of all these city movements or actions. Whereas the World Health Organization has declared COVID-19, the coronavirus, to be a global pandemic, and whereas the President of the United States has declared an infectious disease national emergency declaration to combat COVID-19, and whereas there has been 10, at this time, when this was printed up, there were 10. Now, I think yesterday, what was the figure, 27 or 29? 29. So when this was printed out, confirmed cases within the state of Oklahoma and a confirmed case in Canadian County. Whereas health professionals and researchers have determined that COVID-19 is spread by human contact and interaction. And whereas avoidance of human contact through methods such as social distancing is believed to stop the spread of COVID-19. And whereas the spread of COVID-19 is a disaster affecting life, health, and safety, whereas the provisions of the state law permit the mayor, in our case, the council, to proclaim a state of emergency existing within any area of the city, and therefore, in this particular model, we're in a position to take those whereases and move into the specifics of sections. And the sections, if we agree with with the whereases, the sections have to do with our community in particular, and how do we, as a elected governing body, what's our statement to our municipality, and that's what we are. That's all that we're affecting here is our municipality, Clinton. So that with that, I sent everybody a listing that was printed out of some of the potential or the possibilities that we look at as far as if we decide to do anything to firm up what our city's attitude is, oversight attitude is about this virus and how we're trying to handle it. I've given you 4 state of emergencies that have been declared, and those are, we could go into all the different ones, but the fact that there is a uniformity in the process of the whereases, that'd be from Oklahoma City to Tulsa to smaller communities in general, then we're looking at, are we in a position, do you believe we're in a position to make a statement on behalf of our city? Now, one of the things that is driving this also is the fact that Governor Stitt has declared an emergency for 77 counties. And it specifically indicates that if a community joins that particular declaratory process and in advance of the end of a disaster, then we would, as a city or municipality, be in a position, should we incur financial damage because of the type of disaster that, or the potential damages, we would be in a position then to ask for federal assistance as a community. And that is driving also, I think, some of the multitude of municipalities that are moving in this direction. So keep that in mind also. Now, with that, we want to open this up to discussion. I'm really not sure what would be the most effective thing. We've got, I have declarations from, now these are just at random, Guthrie, Yukon, Weatherford, and Orina, and how they just as examples of how they have chosen to deal with their cities and obviously there is a generalization, you know, of concern, like, you know, encouraging people to, wanting to officially encourage people to obviously carry out the CDC guidelines. That's obviously at the baseline of all this. But then anything further than that would be the city's indicating that we have a responsibility as a public body to become more specific about how we want to basically protect the public safety during this this difficult time when there's really no end in sight. Everyone's being optimistic about being able to get this down, but none of us have experienced this before. So there's no precedent, particularly for this. And unlike a lightning storm that does damage, or tornadoes that do damage, or other places in the country where you have natural disasters that are horrible, but they come and go within a few period of days. This pandemic has to do with an unseen disaster, which is the virus and what that can mean. So with that, I've called you guys together to deliberate on what we know and then some of the things in cases what we don't know. We are expected by I think the general public and certainly the city of Clinton to be prudent, to be rational, to be reasonable, to not be overreactive, but at the same time be responsible.
How do you want to go through these?
Well, you can kind of pick your poison there. Which one you want to look at a particular city and then analyze? Is that what you're talking about, Chris?
I've looked at all of them. I know what I'm talking about.
Okay, then I think if you guys are comfortable, everybody's at a baseline of comfort of what we're doing here, then begin.
First off, I agree with you, but I also think our job is to educate and not mandate.
Correct.
Big difference. The one for me, in looking at all these in reference to the restaurants, if you look at all these, they're all very similar. All of them pretty much stop at, hey, we need to have tables at least 6 feet away. With Yukon and with one of the other ones, it goes a little bit further. Talks about the spacing of the tables, but goes on to say such facilities are further encouraged to transition to takeout or delivery options. If we're going to go down this road, I think that's added verbiage that needs to be in there with reference to restaurants. We're not going to mandate that. I think most of them are already educated on. I think most of the restaurants in our community are already transitioning. I've seen that, so they may already be doing that. But in reference to that, the restaurants, I think that's something that should be in there. We're encouraging that transition.
You're right there. That's like, were you looking at a specific?
It's the same verbiage on Yukon and Guthrie.
Okay. It has to do with, okay, and Guthrie?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just added verbiage that, like I said, I saw on Facebook this morning, one restaurant was already doing it, 2 or 3 were doing it yesterday, so.
Okay, so interact with Chris here. Are you seeing what he's talking about in terms of like, not a mandate, but obviously suggestions? I think it's important. I don't think I've spoken to anybody that's involved in anything trying to privately mandate anything to private businesses. And that has been a confusing thing because last Saturday, the mayor of Oklahoma City, you may have seen him, rose up and basically took authority and has now shut down all restaurants unless they are carry out. And you may receive calls, I know Chris, but Ernie, I don't know if you guys have received calls from restaurants. I just got off with talking to White Dog and talking to Wong's, and there was confusion about that announcement and how that applies. Is that a statewide announcement? I mean, it sounds kind of authoritative. And I told them that from just me personally, that there is nothing about anything that we're doing that has anything to do with mandating anything to the private citizen on private property in their private way. Now that's different than what our discussion will be about our public buildings that we have responsibility for, in my view, but not private. Right. So you're suggesting that, would you like to read kind of what you're talking about there? In terms
it just says restaurants, bars, and other privately owned gathering places are highly encouraged to to limit the number of patrons, such as at least 6 feet of space is available to each patron. And I think that comes from the CDC website. That says such facilities are further encouraged to transition to takeout or delivery options.
All encouraged, just encouraged. Does anybody like to comment on that? Is everybody comfortable with that?
I'm not comfortable with any of it. I wonder, is our next step to try and get martial law invoked where we as Clinton here on the Interstate 40, what are we gonna do with people that come in off of Interstate 40 and they wanna pull into the Days Inn and eat lunch? It's,
Well, Bobby, what?
we lit the fuse, and I think we're trying to decide whether or not the fuse is to either a firecracker or a stick of dynamite. How much damage is it going to do? And we can make all the suggestions we want to. Suggestions is that one of them has already been that your children play in their own yards and they don't play with kids in other yards. I don't even have any kids and my yard is full of kids playing. I'm not gonna go out and tell them kids they can't play in my yard. They've been playing in my yard for 10 years.
But no one's told you you're gonna be fined or you're gonna be sent to prison for that, and that's the point.
What's the purpose? What's the purpose of doing all the whereases and making these suggestions and say, we would like for you to do this?
Hence the term educate.
All right, educate.
Not mandate. You talk about somebody jumping off the interstate. They can still go into the Days Inn and get something to eat. If the gentleman that owns that restaurant, that owns it, chooses to not serve them and close his restaurant, that's his business. We're not running anything. Big difference, educate, mandate. And that's what I'm getting. I agree. I don't want to jump to conclusions. I just want to get information out there to them to make that available so that they can make decisions on their own.
And we're not in the position to educate. Nobody's been through it, right? So that's, I think over the past, is this right, Mark? Over the past 24 hours, we do have a link at our website that would educate someone if they wanted to go and read something. The CDC has information on this virus.
Yes, on our Facebook page and our website, and in an article in yesterday's Clinton Daily News, the CDC website is on there. There's also a telephone number in the information on the city's website and Facebook page. It's called the Coronavirus Telephone Bank. It's actually manned by the State Health Department, and there are people sitting by. I haven't called it, but it is an informational.
And I think it's important to get in front of it as a community and just, like Chris said, educate. I talked to a banker the other day, not in Clinton. I was asking him about what their plans are, and he said, we're gonna go on business as usual until there's a case in Western Oklahoma. Well, I mean, that's extreme, I think. I think that we should be a little bit more, get ahead of it a little bit more than that. Don't wait until there's a case. Before we do put out the information, because we're not telling anybody to do anything. Now, I think that there's a time to visit about our own facilities, what we're going to do with those, and that's where the conversation. We should have that conversation. But as far as businesses, they do what they want.
One thing, Bobby, about this that is important to remember, that this is being done for purposes even beyond. Having a skeleton recommendation puts Clinton on record as being in a position where we could apply for any type of funding that might come up. Who knows what that would be? But we've got to have. We can make a decision not to do anything, but then that would disallow Clinton from being involved in anything in the future that would require federal reimbursement. So there is a skeleton of that. The issue that you're you're talking about, I think, Bobby, is correct, but then at the same time, it goes back to what Chris is talking about. The city of Clinton has a responsibility to educate, and the term education is correct. But at the same time, they go into things like, let me read this particular part. The restaurants, let me see where you are on this, Chris. And then restaurants, bars, and other privately owned gathering places are highly encouraged to limit the number of patrons, such as at least 6 feet of space is available to each patron. Now, you wanted to add on to that.
Yeah, the one, yeah, two of them have just an additional sentence.
And then what was that additional sentence?
Such facilities are further encouraged to transition to takeout or delivery options.
Okay. So, okay, that has to do with private enterprise, and that has to do where people are eating out and gathering. Okay, now, another one that comes up, there's a couple of things. Local gyms and exercise facilities are encouraged to discontinue, this is one, this has been repeated, discontinue all group activities and to significantly increase and enhance facility cleaning regimens. Now, once again, that's not a mandate, that is just a strong encouragement. Now, would you like to talk about that? And what does that have to do with what we know about health transfer and transfer of viruses and that sort of thing? Now, that's not a mandate. You know, we have private gymnasiums and workout places here in Clinton.
And I know the private facilities right now, because I've been there, I mean, they're wiping everything down. They're switching up their regimens to where everybody's not sharing weights and things like that.
And but then that brings us into a duplication of effort in that the city of Clinton owns a workout facility at Acme. And then that brings in the issue of, you know, what's our responsibility?
What are we doing right now?
You know, the only thing that we've done right now is, because the kids are out of school, they're gonna go somewhere. We have made it that anybody under the age of 14 must have adult supervision, because to be quite honest with you, have a lot of kids dumped on us because they need to go somewhere, and Morgan and her staff provide a safe place for our children to go. But unsupervised use can create problems, so we just said under 14 you're not coming in. We already had that in the free weight and elliptical rooms. We've made that throughout the entire facility. You know, what we can do is limit it to the number of people that are inside the facility at one time. I still am somewhat reluctant to shut the doors on the facility. I still believe in the ability of adults to think for themselves. But if we do need to limit the number of people that get in there, we can do that. We've looked at other facilities. I've been very reluctant to shut them down. There are people that is a part of their quality of life, not just that place, but the Senior Citizen Center, the Briscoe Center. We had groups that were had reservations at the Briscoe Center and at the Senior Citizen Center, and they've canceled. You know, I'm seeing people in the community take steps to protect themselves, and I think given the opportunity to do that, they will.
Have you seen some facilities that are already limiting the number of people that they're allowed in at a time? I'm talking about like the fitness center, because I'm in agreement. Some people, that's their quality of life. That's the only thing that keeps them sane, is going to work out, get on elliptical and stuff like that. But you've got the school over here, the state on the other side. They shut down all the workout facilities, but those are for kids. We're talking, I say adults, but we're also talking about 15, 16, 17-year-old kids too. So where's that middle point? And that's what I'd like to find, because I don't want to just shut it down, but I also want to be.
Then that would be a numbers game, is what that would be.
Right.
What has attendance been like out there in the last 2 weeks? Has it dropped off?
It's dropped off.
So people are kind of regulating themselves anyway?
We normally have a lot of elderly people come in the mornings, and we've been pretty slow in the morning time. since then.
Can I ask her one more
Go
question?
ahead.
Are you seeing very many, that kind of answers it, very many of the high school kids that were lifting weights at the high school
Mhm.
all shifted out to your place?
Yes.
So they are all coming out?
There are a few, yes. I think it was Tuesday night, we had about 36 daily passes, and on a normal day, we have about 5 or 6.
But are they all there at the same time?
Kind of, yes, it's more towards the evening time, so they kind of start filing in at about 4, and it kind of lasts till we close.
Okay.
Here's just one way that and this is a question, the way I'm looking at this in terms of what to do and what's prudent. Not every city facility necessarily has to be dealt with at the same time. But for decades, the city has owned the municipal pool for decades. And we've had for decades, people that are dependent on, when they come to quality of life, we need to have a swimming. But for decades, if there is a natural disaster pending, if there's lightning, if there's tornadoes, if there's something out there that you know is ominous, we've never given them the ability to say, you know, you can choose to come and swim. You can choose to come and swim. We'll leave the pool open. That is not our precedent. Our precedent is that someone larger, the people that actually own the pool, which is the government, said, no, we're shutting it down until it is passed. Now, the difference in terms of what you can see and what you can't see is a virus versus and the longevity of how long this lasts and what the whole mechanism. Some of these cities have taken into consideration this, and they have put it like a kind of a quick deadline to shutting something down. Like this will be for 3 weeks, and then we will reevaluate where are we after 3 weeks. And the way that I tend to think sometimes is that we can't take every city facility and look at it in just one big broad brush. Like the senior citizens might be a position where you say, well, you can have events there, but no more than 10 people, or the golf course has a clubhouse, you know, well, you guys, that can go on, but no more than 10 people in the clubhouse. I can see that. But in an area where it's perceived of as maybe more difficult to regulate, and nationwide, and in all these other cities, they're looking at the gathering place where people are working out this and that. It could very well be a transition point for a virus. Then I have a tendency to think that when you look at that, like we look at the pool.
Right. And when you look at all, I've looked at 4 of them. They're all the same. At least it looks like. It says local gyms and exercise facilities are encouraged to discontinue all group activities and to significantly increase and enhance facility cleaning regimens.
And if we were to do that as a city, like encouraging the private people to do that, then I would think we would be hard pressed to not close our facility like we've asked people or we've encouraged people not to do.
Then are you reading this that they're saying close that facility? Because
Well, they don't own it.
They don't own it.
All 4 of them?
No, they
They
don't
don't
own it. I think they're talking
They don't
about
own
like
it.
anytime.
It's just like in
That's
Weatherford, they have
not a city.
Right, that's correct. And like in Weatherford, now, I haven't had time to analyze what they've done, but their discouragement is that. Local gyms, and that is
Okay, they're talking about private.
Well, then you have the YMCA over there,
Right.
for instance, and they're addressing that to them, but then it's up to the YMCA how to handle it. The difference is that we actually own the facility. We are.
Just out of curiosity, what's the YMCA?
I don't know. I don't know. Does anyone know?
I know the big sporting complex east of town, Swole, they closed, I believe they closed down.
Yeah, the Y?
No. It's that brand new complex that they built out
Yeah,
there.
Yeah, but what about the other one?
I don't know about the
You don't know
Y.
about that?
No.
We don't know anything for certain.
We don't know.
I would, you know, if I had to put odds on it, it's going to get worse before it gets better. We all agree on that.
Right.
So, let's say it continues to escalate like it has, and we're 24 hours, 48 hours down the line, we're like, gosh, I wish we'd have done something. Do we have to call another meeting to close that?
I think we would. I
Well,
think
then,
No, I do not need your permission to close the city facility. You can do it on your own if you want to, or I have that right. Because we own it in the
The
city.
reason I ask that, if we don't want to do something now, I'm with you. I think that if you had to pick
Yeah.
close or leave open, I say we close.
Yeah.
That is the one facility that we should discuss closing. But if I'm if I'm in the minority here, then I think we have to have
You
something.
talking about Acme Rig Park?
Yes, sir.
Do you use that?
What are you saying?
I don't even. Yeah, what? No, I'm not saying you need to.
My family's a member, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme, big picture, it's probably better to, if I'm gonna make an error,
Right.
I'd rather make the error of closing it and looking.
I think I'll make it easy for you. There is a confirmed case of coronavirus in Custer County that has just come to light since the meeting was called. In which community it's in, there's rumor, but no fact as to which community it is in, but there is a confirmed case. So,
Well,
maybe, because the comment was made, that we would look at this differently if a confirmed case was reported. Well, it's happened.
Yeah, I mean, but again, grand scheme, if we're gonna make an error, personally, I'd rather make an error and look back in a week or two and go, maybe we shouldn't.
I think the general public is looking for some leadership that makes sense.
Yeah.
And and I think people know that things aren't actually black and white, and that we could be maybe stretching too far to do something. But it's not being unreasonable on the face of it to try to protect against something we're not quite sure, what the ramifications are at this point. So my point is that, and you seem to be making that point, that we do look at Acme workout facility differently. Now, I'm not talking about like walking trails and, I'm not talking about all that. I'm talking about the workout facilities where people are gathering, that we perhaps, if we do anything, that we should, put an end date to all this, like say, well, we'll reevaluate this on April the 7th or April the whatever. I don't know what's reasonable there.
School was April 6th, was it not?
Well, after spring, is that the week after spring break?
2 weeks.
Huh?
Could we reevaluate it at council at the meeting?
I think we do it on a continuing basis. I don't think we put an end date to it at all. I also don't think that we as a council, with Martin having the
Yeah, you have the
ability to shut
ability
this
to
stuff
do it.
down, I don't think we need a mandate for anything to get shut down. I think we should.
Well, we have to tell him if he's.
Well, if you let me finish.
Go ahead.
I think if we continue to have conversations with him about this stuff, get information from him. One thing that I do think we need to consider, and maybe ask Mark right now, for our hourly employees out there. How are we gonna handle that?
Well, social separation is the only thing that works. Can we do things that would hold the public away from the people at the window? Well, yes, we can. Can we limit the number of people that are in there at one time? Yes, we can. I still, even with the confirmed case, I'm still reluctant to shut that facility down. I would rather minimize use than shut it down. And on another facility, there are 6 gentlemen that play dominoes at the Senior Citizen Center, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We called to ask if they were still doing it. They are. I don't want to tell those guys they can't do it.
But I think it's different because I heard Tuesday night I heard the number of 30 kids that were unsupervised, right? And then you have, the gentleman that I heard it from was 63 years old. So you've got a bunch of kids running around, it really doesn't affect them, and then you have these, well, in the senior citizen building, there's not a bunch of kids running around, and they have that,
Right.
they don't read the news, they don't know any information, they don't know anything about social separation.
Well, and I'm not making policy here, and I'm not telling you what I would or wouldn't do, but as far as the kids are concerned, nobody under 18 in the facility. We can do things that limit that. I'm just saying, those are, yes, there are ways.
I think until the start of this meeting, I was 100% against closing any facility. I agree with you. I don't like the fact that we're even giving guidelines, but I understand the need for it, especially if there's potential for any sort of state or federal aid. We have a case of COVID-19 in the county. That drastically is how I feel about our city facilities. That being said, I'm gonna ask the question again. Our hourly employees, are we going to continue to take care of them?
We have taken steps in City Hall to try to create that separation. I haven't locked the
No,
doors yet.
monetarily.
Are they going to?
Oh, if we send them home, they're still on the payroll.
Yeah. That's
Well,
a big deal.
yeah, no, they're, and I've discussed that with some, that's not a question.
I just think that we have to make a decision here, and we have to do it as a body, and not leave it up to any kind of question about when we just need to do it or not do it, and put a timeline or decide how we're going to do it. And I don't think we have to treat the senior citizens place in the same way we do Acme. I don't think we need to do the golf course and the clubhouse in the same way we do Acme. I think, and the libraries are already shut down. And that's because the Western Plains Library, I think, that's our building, but they're inside of it and they've shut down. That would have been another area. And Southwest Playhouse, that's the city's facility, but that private group has basically shut down until it's safe to have plays inside there. So there's some things happening in public facilities that we, other people have made decisions to do. This one is left to us.
I think you talked about measures that you could monitor the facility. That'd be pretty hard. People lifting weights, in there, who's gonna watch them? I don't know how we do that.
And I worry about,
Now, what do you mean by that?
You said you could monitor the flow into the fitness centers and.
well, he was talking about protecting the employees.
Okay.
Well, there would only be so many people that are allowed to go through those glass doors into the exercise facility, regardless of the room we're in. Only so many, now they're all gonna be in one room? Well, it's highly likely, or it's possible.
Yeah.
Probably not likely, but possible.
And that's the hard part. That's going back to, if I'm gonna make an error, I'd rather you come back to me and say,
Rather be
"Well,
out.
I told you, you should have done that." I'm okay.
I don't know about that thing. There are 29 people in this room. Just how worried are we?
No, I wouldn't disagree with you there. So,
Well, I think once again, leadership means that we have to use we're asked to be, from a common sense standpoint, to be proactive in trying to reasonably protect the public safety.
Well, I think Morgan and her staff, to ask her to make sure there's not many people in this room, that kids are doing this, I think it's too much to ask. I think our police is gonna be busy enough by getting, let's say that there is 10, 15 kids doing something that you don't like and you call for some help. You guys might be busy. It's just a risk and reward deal. I don't see how the reward outweighs the risk on this, and I think you get this done, shut that deal down now, and then we go on to the next thing, Briscoe or whatever, we'll talk about it. That's my opinion.
The Briscoe Center is a situation where you have large groups. Have you got anything coming in?
Just what do you got, a birthday party? There was a
birthday
wedding
party that
scheduled
booked
today.
yesterday, but everybody else is pretty much canceled that we had, like this week and next week. Anybody that we had is canceled. We do have a birthday party that's coming in the following week that booked yesterday.
how many people?
30.
But there's nothing within the next 2 weeks that's actually gonna take place there.
I think everything's canceled.
On the area of large gatherings, here's one section: all in-person gatherings of 50 or more people for social, spiritual, recreational purposes, but not limited to community, civic, public, leisure, faith-based, or sporting events, parades, concerts, festivals, conventions, fundraisers, and similar activities are strongly discouraged. Now that is looking at the private sector. That is public making a statement about the private sector. But then they go on, this particular community goes on and regulates itself and says that all pending permit and not issued, and they would, anything that is pending a permit they will not issue any new permits for any public or private events on any city street, sidewalk, facilities, park, or property until further notice. That's the municipality basically saying, okay, in the public terrain, this is the situation. We're suggesting in the zone, it's a suggestion. Are you comfortable with that?
If we're just gonna suggest, are we trying to tell our community here that we don't have enough business owners and leaders out here, that they don't have enough common sense to do this stuff themselves? I mean, are we dealing with an ignorant community that can't make decisions on their own? No, wait a minute. You look at the media, how they have blown this thing up, and we've been flooded with telling, you can't turn the TV on without hearing about the coronavirus. You can't turn the radio on without hearing about the coronavirus. Now, I don't know if Rod's been publishing front page stuff about the coronavirus in the newspaper, but most of the media has got this thing flooded to the hill. It's a tsunami of information that's coming in. And we're dealing with a community here that we're saying is too ignorant to make decisions on their own, to use caution. Now, I'm talking about, if I want to go out to Bronx and get me a almond chocolate snow or ice cream cone, and I pull up to the window, and I order it because I can't go in and order it anymore. So I have to go to the drive-in and I order it. No problem, but when I get up there, this gal hands me my change back that the guy in front of me in California handed her that's a coronavirus carrier. What good has it done us to make all of these whereases and use a little common sense? And I think we've got enough intelligent people in the community of Clinton that are able to make decisions. The American Legion. We didn't wait for this meeting to happen today to tell us to close all of our activities down. Our executive board met. We made the decision on this thing a week ago that we were going to cancel all of our activities. A little common sense goes a long ways. And I just really think that there's enough intelligent business people and organizations in Clinton that we as a city council don't have to come up here and mandate, you gotta go with these little guidelines right here and don't step outside the guidelines. You talk about the weight rooms and the guys going in lifting weights and wiping them down. If we close that facility down, and we say that they can't go out there because they're gonna lift weights, how many of these guys have weights set up in their garages? And they're gonna say, well, come over to my house. And I guarantee you, these high school boys are not gonna wipe those weight bars down every time one of them gets off the bench. They're not gonna desanitize the bench every time one of them gets off of it. So,
We don't own their garage. And here's the deal.
I'm talking about common sense and trying to fight this.
We're talking about common sense too. And that absolutely doesn't
But
make
here's
sense
the
to me,
thing,
what you
here's the
just
thing
said.
that I understand what you're saying, and I'm with you. But let's say this escalates. There was a 50-year-old man that died in Tulsa yesterday. Let's say that this continues to escalate. We don't know what's going to happen. And it really does get bad, right? And we need funding from the government, and we just decided as a city, we're not going to do anything. Well, they say, you're on your own then. I think it's very irresponsible. This is not telling anyone to do anything. And it's very irresponsible to do nothing and act like this is a hoax, because it's not.
Let's set the funding in the A aside. I personally don't want this hanging over my head. If there's a case in Custer County and we could have done something to, anything to prevent it, and it comes back somehow that got contracted at a city facility, I ain't sleeping.
No.
Every law we have is based on the fact that people cannot freely always choose how they're supposed to. They can choose, but they're not going to act the way they're going to act. We have laws, we have speed limits, we have all sorts of things. that are telling people, no, you don't have the freedom of common sense just to hang out there. We're going to tell you this is the parameter where you need to stay. And in this particular case, we're not saying that to restaurants. We are saying, though, common sense. We're going to suggest something, perhaps, that this is common sense. If you want to stay open, then set apart and try to keep us all safe. If you're going to offer for me to come in, if I want to come down and I want to eat at a restaurant, then do me the courtesy of keeping me safe in your environment. And on the issue of Acme, that's ridiculous. We own Acme. We have a responsibility as public officials to make a call on something that, yes, we do not know how it is. Your American Legion bunch, they had the good common sense to say, we're not meeting. They didn't leave it up to you to make a decision. They said, we're not meeting.
Don't raise your voice at me, but what you're saying about Acme Park, I'm not arguing about that. I'm saying if we shut it down, we have the privilege to shut it down. But these fellows are gonna go to their friends' houses, and they're gonna lift weights in their garages. And you've just moved it from Acme Park, which is a good decision possibly, moved it from Acme Park. But you have no control over the local garages.
We can't catch it all. We're trying to minimize.
If everybody does their part, that's the only thing they know that can stop this deal. And that's all we're doing is trying to do our part.
And it's not about trying to mandate private activity. It is like being educational. Chris put that well from the very beginning. It's just more encouraging. That's all that's happening from this national level all the way down, unless they come up with some sort of thing where they try to shut the whole country down. And once again, I hope, Ray, that is not the case, and we're not anticipating that. But in Oklahoma City, they've gotten rather drastic. And
Chris, you gotta get a nice school. Is the weight room or the exercise facilities at the school still open?
No.
They can't go in there at all.
That's close.
Bobby, I don't like the fact that we're at this point either, any more than we do. Establishing guidelines, I don't think it's educational, I think it's informative. I'll choose a different word. But again, we're not telling any private business that they cannot open their doors. We're not telling them that they can't operate, that they can't sell a burger, that they can't sell an ice cream. We hope that they do it in a different manner. We hope they do it in a responsible manner. I think a lot of businesses have already started doing that. I've seen it. If this is something that needs to be in place, going back to the federal aid, state aid funding, I don't see where we can't not do it in some capacity. As far as the local stuff, the city stuff, with the confirmed case in Custer County, we gotta get serious about it.
And if you'd have told me 48 hours ago that we would have been here doing this, I'd have said no, we're not getting involved. But it's just,
Scars were dealt.
it's the responsible thing to do. And I'm with Patch, cards were dealt, and I don't want to do this either, but here we are.
So where do we move from here?
what we do is that we can take one of these, they're all the same on the whereases, and we get down to the sections, and then we can move, I think, probably pretty quickly and smoothly, and identify verbiage that were the areas that we want to put in our sections. And you can look at our sister community over here, who's just moved on it, or you can look at Yukon, you can look at El Reno. There are some variations in that. But we've talked about three prime things here: public facilities and how we think we want to deal with them. We've talked about restaurants, bars, and eating establishments, and how and from an informative standpoint. And we just need to make a decision, like on any exceptions, like on public facilities. If we want to specifically say that senior citizens limit would be X number of people and in the Briscoe Center, I think, what was the group size of these? Is it always at 10 or is it just 50 now? Is it 50 or 10 as far as what's recommended gathering? It's kind of going down. We need to make a decision whether we want Briscoe Center to be actively pursuing new people for the next two. And that's another thing, we just need to come up with a timeline on this. I do think we need a timeline. I think we need to review it and like, when's our next council meeting?
2 weeks from
April
Tuesday.
7th.
April 7th, then there you go. Or something like that. And then we're in a position, whatever we do, to review it. And then if it's time, if everything seems to be subsiding or things seem to be changing, then we're in a position to change. We're not doing anything to the private sector. Nothing's changing the way they are now. We're just encouraging them to be CDC compliant. That's what we're doing. That doesn't need to be changed. But if we change something about active grip, then we can review it. And senior citizens and Briscoe Center and the golf course, we can review it. But we need to identify the priorities that you guys can identify. And you've looked at these, and we just need to put verbiage. You want to add something to the
The restaurant, they already did it in there on the restaurant. It was added.
only which ones?
Guthrie and Yukon.
Okay, we need to, and then for Lisa's purposes, we need to go through and fill in the sections, and put verbiage to it, and that would be a vote to either do it or not. And then Ryan is not here, it would be all subject to our legal counsel to review, and if everything looks good, then we would be enacted on a particular day. So, for instance, section 1, in one community, is a state of emergency exists within the corporate limits of the city of Clinton. That's section 1. You can look at Weatherford, I'm not sure, Yukon. Section 2, this proclamation shall be effective on a certain day. So we need to pick a date that this would be effective.
Tomorrow.
Right.
Well, it says noon.
Well, and we got to get,
We have to have Ryan
Yeah.
review it.
He's in or out, he's not back in town.
subject to, so you could put it today or tomorrow morning or something, just in time to be able to. Okay, so if you did it tomorrow, if you did it tomorrow.
Dave, you don't need to put a date, just subject to his review.
Yeah, earliest possible time, subject to
To the review.
council's.
Well, you know how to write that.
You can,
Declaration, or proclamation, whatever you call this, effective immediately upon review of council. Does that sound right?
yeah, it's be effective upon review of council, period.
But we don't need to put anything like, in case something happened, or he's not around, or we don't need to have a date in there.
No. The date doesn't mean anything until he reviews it.
Okay.
It can be effective upon the date of review.
Well, then that would need to be notified, and there'd have to be some sort of public notification when that's been reviewed.
Set it for tomorrow.
Set it tomorrow. Let's go with
8 a.m.
tomorrow, what time?
8 a.m.
Friday? What is, March what? March 21? 20. Yeah, 8 a.m. And then subject to review of council. Okay, now, the mayor shall revoke any pending permit and not issue any new permit for any public or private event on any city street, sidewalk, facility, park, or property until further notice. You comfortable with that?
But doesn't is that Weatherford that you're reading?
Well, I got 4 of them here. Yeah, that has to be Weatherford.
Does that fall under city manager's?
I do, I just think it needs to say no, and list those types of bids shall be issued.
Huh? Okay, well, so what's the verbiage on that? No,
Blank permits shall be issued.
no pending permit and not issue any new permits for any public until further notice. Right. I think all we have to do is great. All right, section 4. This is to assure that we would continue to meet, whether you want us to or not, the meetings of the city council and authorities will continue. These meetings will remain open to the public. Steps will be taken to ensure no close contact between attendees. It is encouraged to watch these public meetings. We have access, but it's after the fact. There's no live presentation of our meeting. They can watch it the next day, and then January. Where is he? Yeah, this presentation on a council meeting can be reviewed the next day. Is it that quick?
It takes about an hour or two to get it processed. So once it's done,
So normally it's on
3
the
hours.
city website. Okay. Is everybody comfortable with that? Everybody be comfortable with that? Okay. Then the Clinton, let's see. The other things we talked about has to do with all in-person gatherings of 50 more people. This is this recommendation, it's not a mandate. Social, spiritual, recreational purposes, including but not limited to community, civic, public, leisure, faith-based or sporting events, parades, concerts, festivals, conventions, fundraisers, and similar activities are strongly discouraged until further notice. Are you comfortable with that? Restaurants and bars and other privately owned gathering places are highly encouraged to limit the number of patrons such that at least 6 feet of space is available to each person. And then you said that the Guthrie would add on that. Chris, what were you saying?
It just says at the end, such facilities are further encouraged to transition to takeout or delivery options.
Or further, okay. Is everybody comfortable with that? What do you say?
And I think too, Pat's kind of hit the nail on the head. I think educate at the beginning. And I think it was more of, just want to keep them informed of options, not that they don't already know.
Yeah, they can probably educate us.
Absolutely.
Huh? Okay, and then local gym and exercise facilities are encouraged to discontinue all group activities and to significantly increase and enhance facility cleaning regimens. That's another edict to private to do that. And then we would need to add in section, another section, which would indicate our desire on Acme, on our city facilities. Acme brick inside, I don't know how you call that, would be closed until April the 7th for the review, or do we put
I
it?
don't even know if you put a date.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
You don't put a date?
Until further notice.
Okay,
It's going to be council reviews.
okay, it's under review.
Mark, that's a switch you can flip on your own, right? That's a switch you can flip on your own.
I'm sorry.
To open or close.
If you don't put it in here, yes. If you put it in here, then that's your flip, your flip.
Our switch.
You need to put it in here.
No,
No,
You agree?
you're saying not to put it in.
Well, no, I'm thinking we ought to keep it in there. And
Keep the date?
No.
No, the fact that-
Oh,
Lay out. I thought who could make the decision to open and close it. Okay, if they want to open it back up, it has to come back before council.
So on Acme, the closing would be indefinite until, okay. And then what about the other facilities, senior citizen? Is that 8 or more?
What's our exposure there?
We don't have any reservations at this time.
No, the first
We-
reservation we have is the 28th.
Who is that?
It's that art.
Oh, yeah. It was an animal relief fund, fundraiser. The issue that we have is we have a group of ladies, now there's 3 or 4, that come in there and quilt. And then we've got some guys, about 6 of them, that play dominoes. You want to talk about our exposure,
Right.
that's it.
No.
And they're adults.
Yes.
most at risk.
And I, you know, I think they know that, but you're right.
Okay, so what about senior citizens? Are we gonna treat it as launch and just close it, or are we gonna, what are we gonna do there?
I think that I have to tell you that, we're closing it.
If you're gonna throw that over, it's not gonna throw that over at all.
Well,
I don't like it, but I think it's necessary.
We can always review.
well, you got, okay, you have the golf course, and the clubhouse. Would that be able-
If you do that, how do you honor?
It's the
what's
same
what's the
deal
golf
on the
course?
senior citizen.
Yeah, so,
If you shut that down, you're gonna shut everything down.
We could do the limitation.
well, then,
I disagree on the senior citizen
well, then we put a restriction on it. I mean,
because of the age group.
Yeah,
Well, because
well, just,
you don't have a bunch of snot-nosed kids running in there and getting close to you. You have adults that understand the situation.
Well, that's what you got the senior
That's-
citizens.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Right.
Coronavirus.
Well, that's the demographic that is affected.
so what do you think the exception should read on that? Groups of,
You mean on the senior
What does
citizens?
it say? Is it 10?
Or no reservations to be made for,
Okay.
for group activities at the senior citizens.
does that exceed a certain amount of people?
That's up to you. I just.
Those people don't have reservations.
No,
Yeah,
they
don't
have,
reservations.
they have a key,
There you go.
yeah.
Who's gonna monitor that?
Yeah,
No reservation. Well, it's just.
See, no
going back
reservations.
to common sense, they're of age to where they can kind of figure things. The acting, that's the only thing I was pressing for because of the age. Because of,
All right, well, then should we just stick with acting?
that's my vote.
What do you think?
Jermaine, ask for clarification. When you're discussing closing Acme Great Park, we're discussing closing the indoor facilities, not the playground, not the
Correct.
walking trail, not the fishing.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Indoor facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, what about that, guys? You want to just deal specifically with that facility as a council action?
Well, I think if you want to touch on another facility, I like what you said. No reservation, not any reservations.
Which would be the Briscoe Center, the Senior Citizen Center, Southwest Playhouse. Where else do we rent?
does the golf course have any tournaments scheduled?
I'm sure he's got some on the calendar, but I don't know.
So it would be to not issue any new reservations.
What do you think, Mark?
I think eliminating reservations makes sense at the Senior Citizen Center. That allows the two groups that don't have reservations, they have rights of access to utilize, but they're very small groups.
Right.
And I hate to tell them that they can't come do what they do, but no additional reservations. Like we said, we've only got the one right now. The Briscoe Center, I think you mentioned when you have another reservation there,
April the 2nd,
okay, and that is
so it's birthday party.
a birthday party of 25. You know, I would like to think that they've probably already made plans in things that they've done. But to make no additional reservations, I hate to do that, because that thing is used a lot, but, hey, we've got a confirmed case.
Right.
Game change.
Under these circumstances. I've got a deal here, that there are 8 in Chesterton.
We saw that, we think that's a misprint.
Think it's a misprint?
Yeah, the official Oklahoma Health Department cites it, one.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a
Yeah,
misprint.
we did see that.
Okay.
That's why we went and checked on some stuff.
Okay, so we're gonna specifically deal with the closing of the, I don't know, what do you call the internal, your chief was wondering, what do you call?
The exercise facility, that's what we've referred
Each will
to.
put the verbiage.
Activity center.
Yeah.
No more.
Sign this, we're gonna sign this. We're gonna be able to vote on this. And then, okay, so the other facilities then would be just no new reservations.
We're telling Chief Morgan, the Armory, after-school program, which does not become an issue until
School begins.
school starts again.
Yes. Yeah, the after-school program doesn't run unless school is in session.
Hopefully that will be an issue.
And April the 7th, is that when school supposed to start at the end? 6, okay.
I don't know.
Then today's the 19th.
All that.
Okay, so with those specifics in mind, that's what we are going to see if we can agree on. Then the state of emergency shall continue until further notice. That would be another sectional. That just basically takes through like the no date. Okay, and then proclaim this day the 19th of March, and then all this subject to review and then inaction or action thereafter.
The Southwest Playhouse, they have delayed their performance
Until
until,
April the 17th, and then they may be in a position, I haven't talked to them, they may be going until the end of May.
so that's scheduled.
It's scheduled, that's their normal play thing, but there are also times that.
No, per your verbiage, they're scheduled, therefore they would still be allowed to have them.
Correct. That would be correct. But.
And by the way, they're the ones that chose to delay their performance.
Yeah, that's just another private group that has already taken over.
That's right, you're in this play, aren't you?
Yeah, but I didn't have anything to do with that.
No.
That was a lot of even-handed people. But they may not even do that, see, then. It just depends on where we are nationally. Okay. So with that in mind, and now, Bobby, are you clear on the points that we talked about here?
Yeah, I'm just wondering where we insert martial law.
And then
That's the next
Patch,
thing that follows state of emergency.
Patch, you clear where we are?
So, yeah.
Yes.
Chris and Ernie? Okay. So, we need, if you'll call roll for, yes, passage of this proclamation.
So someone's going to have to make a motion.
Isn't it, are we almost a proclamation, or your resolution is what you
No,
know?
well, it's actually probably, I don't know if that, it's either going to be a proclamation or declaration.
No, it's gonna be a resolution, because that's what's on your agenda.
So I guess we can, that have the same proclamation.
Is there a differentiation?
You know, Ryan didn't seem to think so. One of them's got as many teeth as the other.
Okay,
And I would tell you, because of all the marks on your paper,
yeah.
that I think Lisa takes all these and puts them into what we both remember that you said. We get them back out to the 5 of you so that we're all in agreement that this was what's said. But I don't think we're breaking any open meeting laws by doing that.
Emergency status, there were all the rules changed anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, we're just going back out to verify the fact that this was, that we've got it written down correct,
yeah.
is what we're doing.
And then, but we can have a motion for passing what we've done here
As presented.
as presented.
Upon review.
And then upon, yeah.
By the city attorney. Yes, by council, that's what you call it. S-E-L.
All right. Everybody clear? Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the proclamation resolution upon the approval of the city attorney and then the 5 city council.
Yeah, there's 6 from you.
That's my motion.
Okay.
Councilman Dowdell?
Yes.
Councilman Jones?
Yes.
Councilman McComas?
Yes.
Councilman Stewart?
No.
And Mayor?
Yes.
No, you have to know, you don't get to do that.
I have a
You have
motion
to move to adjourn.
Well, okay, then we're gonna be non-dictatorial about it. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Councilman Dowdell,
Yes.
Councilman McComas,
Yes.
Councilman Stewart,
Yes.
Councilman Jones,
Yes.
and Mayor.
Yes.